Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bleav in Bengals podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots, and I'm joined by our Cincinnati Bengals insider, Charlie Goldsmith. And Charlie, look, one day after the Monday night massacre that took place in Denver, Cincinnati Bengals lose 28-3 to the Denver Broncos. And it was almost a repeat of what we saw in week 3. Cincinnati Bengals are now 2-2 after getting off to an 2-0 start, and they have now been outscored, 76-13 in their last 2 games, falling behind early and losing by 25 points on the road to Denver. Help me to understand, why is this team now getting blown out? Is this really about one guy no longer being on the team due to injury? Is this all about Joe Burrow no longer being there for the Bengals?
Well, it's Joe Burrow. It's Jake Browning not playing as well as he did in 2023, missing opportunities that the Bengals would have expected him to take. It's a coaching staff that 2 years ago actually was good at adjusting, that this year clearly has not made successful adjustments. And that's a big part of the concern. The offensive line is the worst that it's been since 2020. The defense, while a couple guys have had moments, other guys and other parts of the plan just haven't come to fruition in any way whatsoever. You add it all up, over the last 2 weeks, it's looked as bad as it possibly could.
The Denver Broncos had 23 more first down than the Cincinnati Bengals in the Monday night game. They had 353 more yards, 512 yards of total offense, but 353 more yards than the Cincinnati Bengals, who only had 159 yards of total offense. 25 more points than the Bengals were able to score. This was, I got to tell you, there was a problem here, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking the Bengals are going to get up off the canvas. After losing by 38 points on the road to the Minnesota Vikings, usually when teams get beat that bad, one of the worst defeats in franchise history, they come back the next week, man, and you see a whole different mindset. Charlie, is there any reason, can you put your finger on why we didn't get something different from the Bengals? Why we didn't get more fight from a Cincinnati Bengals team in front of a nationally televised audience when you almost always get a good performance from an NFL team?
I think the answer to the question is just the question of why, because there are things you felt very good about with the Bengals over the course of the last 6 years, because you hadn't seen moments like this, because you hadn't seen stretches like this. And this feels alarmingly and blatantly different from anything that we're used to. And a part of it, like I said, you look at personnel, you look at coaching, then some of the intangible stuff that showed up in the penalties yesterday, the way the game kind of got out of hand, some of the situational football, some of the complimentary football. It's just all of it. And I don't have an answer. Why is it like this is kind of the defining question.
Look, I'm going to say something that I'm the kind of person, I lean towards coaching. I love coaches. And I think Zach Taylor's a good coach. And I think it's indicative of, last year, 2 years ago with Jake Browning, the way that they morphed into a different team and still won that many games without Joe Burrow and what they were able to get out of Jake Browning. I think that's a testament to the kind of coach that Zach Taylor is. I think last year when they did not have this great defense, but yet the offense knew they had to maximize whatever they had, and then you scored 30 points in more than half your games, about 8 games last year. That's a testament to him as a coach and a play caller. The fact that he's been able to beat some really good coaches like Andy Reid in his young tenure as a coach. One of the things that I touted for why I really do like Zach Taylor is his team was always one of the most least penalized in the NFL. You and I know this, right? And then I watched the Monday night game. They had more penalties than they had first downs, 11 penalties. There were more. They just didn't get accepted, right? and 5 penalties among the offensive line group. I'm starting to see things creep into this team that just has not been part of Zach Taylor's team. Help me to understand what's taking place here. Why is his team this year looking different than what we're accustomed to seeing?
It's something I don't understand. It'd be like, if I woke up and all of a sudden, I wrote with my right hand instead of my left hand, it'd be, wait, what happened? Or you look yourself in the mirror. What just went on here? If, my eyes were blue instead of brown. But that's what's gone on with the Bengals. There's a lot of the discipline stuff that's pretty unrecognizable. The adjustments that they failed with are pretty unrecognizable. They've had things to hang their hat on that have just been eliminated. And I don't know that there is an answer for it. It's shocking. It's alarming. It's the kind of stuff that can happen. But it's just been kind of the definition of what the last two games have been for Cincinnati.
Yeah, I do think it's a testament to coaching in two areas, the discipline of a team in terms of their operations. Like, this was a team that really focused on a lot of those things during training camp, as you well know. Mm-hmm. And getting off to a fast start is about handling the operations, which minimize penalties and confusion, allows people to think less so they can play faster, right? The change in the offensive line coach to Scott Peters was supposed to be a thing that was going to bring about greater improvement. There was greater emphasis this offseason on being able to run the ball and use the run game and create a more balanced offense, so where Joe Burrow was not throwing 70% of the time and we're running at 30. You and I know this. They were very intentional about being more balanced on the offense. I remember talking with Zach Taylor about it, but nonetheless, this is a team that they're not doing any of the things that they had started. And I'm starting to think about it this way. Usually when you build around a player like a Joe Burrow, a quarterback, that means you put the resources in the wide receivers. That means you'll expect to play with a lead. That means you're not having to defend another team's running game because they got to throw to keep up with you. The other team's got to throw it to score points because your offense is scoring points. And it's kind of like if you build a building, you have that main truss, that I-beam that everything's connected to, that gives whatever it is you're building, that gives it structure and stability, right? And so when you say, let's remove this one piece, it's a pretty big piece. It's pretty integral to your engineering. And if you remove that one piece, and I know it's hard to say, one player doesn't make a team. But when you construct your team around one real critical piece, when the engineering requires that piece, you remove that one piece, it's going to become very wobbly. Is that what's happening here? Is that what I'm seeing here? Offensive line issues, the inability to run the ball, all these other things. Is that what I'm seeing?
It all goes back to the offensive line. And they built this offensive line to try to be the best pass protecting unit that they could. Pass protection's poor, obviously we know. And they're playing at left guard and right guard hasn't come to fruition. It's been some tough moments for Orlando Brown over the course of the season. They weren't built to run the ball, and now when you have to play that card more, you just can't. So now you have Jake Browning throwing up a lot of 50-50 balls to try to be the hero and make something happen, and there's just nothing to hold their hat on. There's no other card to play. I think the offensive line is the biggest piece of it, and that's drafting, that's player acquisition, player development. Now, a tough part of it all is, if this were, like a new defense, for example, you give them a bit of a leash, right? They're learning a new scheme, all that. I do think some of that's happening on the offensive line. It's too early to evaluate, what Scott Peters can do in this role and the changes he can make. But the problem is the Bengals need to win now, and they had to have figured out the offensive line years ago. And because they didn't, here they are.
Well, Charlie, as you know, this portion of the show is brought to you by heroes.com. Now, what is heroes.com? It really is about celebrating heroes in our everyday lives, the people that pray for us, the people who cheer for us, the people who encourage us, right? People who help us every single day. You go to heroes.com, you can support that mission, and you can also support the Bleav in Bengals. And of course, I'm going to get one of these tumblers out to Charlie, and I'm going to get one out to you. If you send in your questions, we'll answer those questions on our next show. And look, you can order one in either orange, you can get it in black, you can get it whatever color you want. Just use the QR code that you see at the bottom of the screen. That'll take you to the website, and you can help support. That's right, heroes.com. So we want to thank you for that. Look, Charlie, you talked about the run game. Right now, the Cincinnati Bengals, I think they're losing at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. It's hard to win games, even with a Joe Burrow. If you aren't strong on your offensive line and your defensive line, your ability to run the ball and stop the run, because that's what we saw in the Monday night game. The Denver Broncos had their first 100-yard rusher in 38 games since Sean Payton's become their head coach. J.K. Dobbins just running right through us. Okay, our defense didn't do a good job of stopping the run. And our offense ranks dead last in averaging 50 rush yards per game. We only have 200 yards rushing in the 4 games that we've played so far this season. Ranked dead last in the NFL. We rank last in rush yards per rush attempt. 2.6 yards per carry. We're getting Chase Brown killed in the backfield, for crying out loud. And this guy is a really good runner, as you well know. And we have the lowest total of rushing attempts of 10 yards or more. 2 in 4 games, man. What I'm asking here is that even if we had Joe Burrow, I think we'd be struggling, because we did against Cleveland in week 1. We did week 2 against Jacksonville when Joe left the game. I think we were losing on the scoreboard. So I'm not going to sit here and act like all of these problems are simply because Joe Burrow's not playing. And I'm asking how we've been drafting and how we've been building the team and how we've been engineering the team and the systems in which we're using. We're in shotgun. We don't run power run game. We don't run pin and pulls. We don't help our offensive linemen with the design of our run game. And in what ways can we make changes to help this team right now? Joe Burrow isn't walking through that door, Charlie. And so in what ways, from the top down of the organization, can they begin to think about the way things are getting done and how they can make changes to help with improvements?
Well, schematically, here's the sad part. I haven't been able to go through the specific run by run and chart every run yet from the Broncos game, but I did that for the Vikings game. And when I charted every single run they did and what plays they were running, they were doing different stuff. They made significant changes for the Vikings game, and those changes failed. And then
what were those changes?
They did a lot. They did more under center. They did some wider, longer developing outside plays to try to get Chase Brown the ball more in space, more outside of the tackles runs. There are a couple others that are written down in my notebook, which is in the other room. But they tried some different schematic stuff. That was a reflection of the Minnesota front they were facing. And then they had a Denver-specific game plan in the run game as well. But you get to the point where, while of course you should always adjust your plan to your opponent, there's no, what do the Bengals do? What are the Bengals going to impose? This is a bad example, but the Eagles are going to run the tush push no matter who they're playing. The Bengals in the run game, they don't have that run. They don't have that attack. It's opponent to opponent. And without that being able to hang their hat on, that leaves you without a real strength in the run game.
And that speaks to the way that you build your roster, having very specific needs, or do you want to have a roster that is very versatile, that allows you a different way to achieve victory? And I do believe that based on opponents, victory's got to be achieved differently each and every week. And then one week, one guy may be the focus of that. Another week, it may be another guy. And you saw in this game, the frustration now starting to spill over. Jamar Chase is a very prideful young man. I think he's always been very respectful. I think he is in his right place, given the contract that he has, given the expectations, as you well know, that comes with being one of the top paid wide receiver in the NFL. There's a certain expectation that come with that. And I think he's ready to live up to those expectations. I don't think what we saw on the sideline as he was talking to Zach Taylor, and Zach even talked about it. Hey, the guy wants to win. The guy wants to be productive in winning. I guess my question to you is, how did the Bengals not waste Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? How do they get value out of these two talented players in the absence of Joe Burrow?
Well, it's funny. Before you said that last line, my tongue-in-cheek answer was going to be, you keep Burrow healthy. Why can't you keep Burrow healthy? Because of the hits he takes. Like, it all goes back to the same stuff.
Yeah.
They tried throwing more 50-50 balls to T yesterday. That didn't get going to the extent they needed to. It also just wasn't a crisp enough and efficient enough offense for them to be even in enough of those strike zone opportunities. So, cut the penalties out, run the ball better. You'll be in 2nd and 2, let's say, or 1st and 10 from midfield, and you'll be in more positions to call your shot plays, as opposed to, 3rd and 15 when they're in cover 2, when they're, doing double with T and Jamar, and one of those corners is Pat Surtain. You're not in positions to be able to feed those guys the ball. So it's not Jamar's fault. It's not T's fault. It's just they're never in position to get them the ball based on the game and down and distance situations that they're in. So we keep going back to all the problems we've been talking about. That's why they can't do any of this.
Yeah. Does this team have any fight left? I thought we would see that in Denver. Coming off the Minnesota game, you lose by, 38 points. I mean, the NFL, the mantra is these are prideful men. And you get up off the mat and you give it your best shot. I don't ever question a team's heart. I don't question their character because I believe players want to win. But when you get outscored 2 consecutive weeks and outplayed the way that they have, I gave you the numbers. The disparity was significant. And to me, this is not, I don't think as much as about how to, as much as we can now start talking about the want to. And so what did you see?
Well, they better have fight, because how many of these guys have guaranteed starting spots in 2026? And there are a few of them. I think Jordan Battle's having a nice solid year, even though he didn't have a splashy game on Monday. But Geno Stone's going to be a free agent. Cam Taylor-Britt's going to be a free agent. He's had a bad season. DJ Turner's trying to get a contract extension. He has struggled to solidify himself. Dax Hill has been a win. Demetrius Knight, he's had his ups and downs. He's fighting. Logan Wilson is looking to prove that he's still got it. Trey Hendrickson's in a prove-it year. BJ Hill's later in his career and has a lot to prove that way. Chris Jenkins has a lot to prove as he tries to show he can be a starter in the league. Just Fosai bet on himself on a 1-year prove-it deal. This whole offensive line, aside from Amarius Mims, are guys who need to show that they're better than they are. Orlando Brown will be a starter either way, but I can guarantee you he is bitter about how he's playing these tight ends. It's like there's no starting tight end on this team, just in terms of their roles. Like, they're all trying to show that they should be the guy. Then you got Jamar T, Chase Brown. Jake Browning is trying to set himself up for the rest of his life financially. Like, these are guys with a lot to play for. So that'll, I think, keep them, from quitting down the stretch, but you need to see it more than you did these last couple of weeks.
And guys like an Andre Yoshivash and guys like Mike Gesicki. I mean, there's a lot expected of a lot of players. Some of the ones you've already named on the defensive side of the ball. I just named those 2 because they're on the list as well as guys that. And then without Joe Burrow, you just don't see the production being there for these players like it would have been. Like Andre Yoshivash would have had this year because Joe was so inclined to get him the ball as much as he would anybody else because he has this high level of comfort. And now you just see the production numbers now are just so pedestrian, even for the offensive stars on this football team.
That's because they're, when you have 3 and outs, you don't have a lot of plays, so you don't have a lot of chances to get different people the football, and you're stuck. And then it's like, all right, how do we feature T. Higgins more this week? Was a conversation we had last week. When you try to feature T more, and you only have, I know it was more than this, but you only have like 15 plays in the whole game, and you give 5 more of those plays to T, well, then you only have 10 plays left for everyone else. And when you're not even getting enough opportunities to feed T and Jamar, how are you supposed to find opportunities for Gesicki and Yoshivash? They're supposed to be the guys who, when defenses adjust, then you make them pay with these supplementary guys. You're not making the defenses pay with your stars right now. That's not the stars' fault. It's the ecosystem's fault. Yeah. And so then why would the plays to the secondary guys be working either?
That's a really great point by you, Charlie. I got to ask you before we get to our look ahead segment, give us an update on Shamar Stewart. I'm not seeing him in the games. I know he was banged up in the, I think it was the Minnesota game. What's going on with him? Boy, they need him. They need a pass rush, by the way.
I think he's a part of this in terms of a guy they're missing. It's funny. I go back to the Al Golden quote from training camp, which is like guys who can be as rugged as they are on the outside and then really rush inside are rare. And Shamar was showing some real interior rush ability that the Bengals just don't have any of. He's week to week with an ankle injury. We'll see. I bet they want to get him some meaningful practice reps as a rookie with limited experience under his belt before they throw him back in there, and we'll see how that develops this week.
Wow, that one is very interesting and something to keep an eye on. Okay, now it's time for our look ahead segment brought to us by Anjanette France of Sipsey Klein Realty. For all of your real estate needs in the tri-state area, just go to that QR code and you can get in touch with her. This is a lovely lady who represents Sipsey Klein very well. She knows the city. She knows the players, and she is a playmaker for the players in the world of real estate. So use the QR code, give her a call if you are looking for a place for real estate when it comes to residential or commercial. All right, let's look ahead to the game that is week 5. The Detroit Lions are coming to town, Charlie. Think about it. They've won 3 straight games. They've scored 30 or more points in all 3 of those games. In fact, they're averaging 41 points a game during their 3-game win streak. And there's a young man on this team, and I'm a big fan of. He's a running back by the name of David Montgomery. He's a local kid from Mount Healthy High School. When the schedule came out, Charlie, he said they're going to live the regret never bringing me. He wanted to be a Bengal. He wanted to play on this team. And I don't know if you saw the game week 3 against the Baltimore Ravens. He shredded them for 151 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. This guy's a heavyweight player at the running back position. And I'm telling you right now, this Detroit Lions team, they are a heavyweight. I don't want to see our team get knocked out for the 3rd straight week, but this is a big-time team coming in here week 5 Sunday.
And they can do it in every way. You start with that offensive line. You start with their depth at running back. They're savvy with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Their speed with Jamison Williams. Sam Laporta has some huge fans at Paycor Stadium. And they built an ecosystem around some really talented guys. And it's a team that can beat you in a lot of different ways.
Right.
And then on defense, it's a feisty, aggressive, powerful group that's capable of punching teams in the mouth, and the Bengals are a team that's been getting punched in the mouth a lot recently. So it's a tough matchup, and I don't even think it's as much about X's and O's here. It's just what do the Bengals do to show up and to be the aggressor, and their game plan they come up with to try to make a stand and get some momentum. How they establish that, I don't know.
Look, this is a heavyweight team that went into M&T Bank Stadium and knocked out the Baltimore Ravens. They had 2 drives of 90 yards or more in that game. I mean, they were phenomenal in how they literally KO'd the bully that is the Baltimore Ravens. And now they're going to come into Paycor Stadium looking to take out another AFC North team. And if you're not up to the fight against Dan Campbell's group, Amon-Ra St. Brown, you and I know he and Jamar Chase have this thing going from that 2021 draft class. We get a close look at Penei Sewell and the offensive line that they have that we could have had. And there's a lot of parallels for me in this game that I'm thinking this is going to be some deja vu. We've been outscored again 76-13 in the last 2 games. Charlie, can we hang with them? I'm just asking now, can we even play with it? When this game came out on the schedule, I'm thinking shootout between Joe Burrow and Jared Goff. This is going to be a great game. Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Jamar Chase. And now I'm asking you, are they going to come in here and knock us out in the first round?
That's what the paper would show because of Detroit's, again, ability to be as aggressive as they've been on defense, and their ability to create mismatches on offense against the Bengals team, against the Bengals defense that's been very mismatchable. So on paper, it doesn't look good. Now, if this is a game where, Jamar Chase can carry the Bengals because they make the right adjustment or they get Chase Brown in space more, they establish the screen game.
Yes.
What are the paths? I have no idea. This is the greatest football coaches of all time would be having not sleepless, but long nights this week. And I'm sure Zach Taylor and his staff will be doing the same. It's just going to be a flat out tough challenge where the Bengals have to play not just their best game of the season, they're going to have to play their best game since 2023 to come out on top here.
Everything now is under review. How the team was built and how it was constructed. Who are the players that we drafted? I'm talking first and second round picks. There's a lot of them. I've seen other teams win Super Bowls and still draft well. And those players, look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got rookies and second-year players playing. Nick Herbert, Wilson, the linebacker from NC State, Damon Harmon. Their young guys are playing and they're winning with young guys. You got to be able to play first and second, third-year players, and they're supposed to be able to help you win in this league. This is the NFL. There are no JV teams. Charlie, you're the best, my friend. That's going to do it for this week. We look forward to talking to you again next week. I hope it's under different circumstances. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Bleav in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. Thank you, everyone.